Welcome back to my channel, and boy do I have an exciting Draw My Life for you. Except I have no drawing talent. That was an oversight. We'll have to settle for bad social commentary then. Roll intro! As we all know, I'm obsessed with watching shit that I can relate to. This alienates me from a lot of popular stuff, and I inevitably only have 1 or 2 series per season, and a handful of movies per year that directly speak to my soul. Today, we're looking at a series that was meant to speak to my soul, but which also struggled in some aspects because such is life when the creators know they're only going to appeal to a niche community, and thus can't put the time and effort into a series that they really should. The series in question is Fune, a.k.a, or The Great Passage in English. It came out in 2016 and was promptly forgotten in the streaming hell that is Amazon Prime. The first time I watched it, I was still in college and I focused solely on the things I could relate to, and I loved it a lot. Rewatching it for the sake of this video, my slightly older adult brain raised an eyebrow at a few aspects of this series. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. What the hell is The Great Passage even about? The ultra-abridged version would be, autistic man finds his dream job, gets the girl, and proceeds to drown himself in his work. To expand a little, this is the story of Majime, a socially awkward but very well-read guy who ends up working in the dictionary department of a major publishing company. Egged on by his social butterfly coworker, Majime grabs his balls and confesses to the woman he likes in a 16-page letter written in basically literary Chinese. Afterwards, he drowns himself in his dictionary work for the remainder of the series as he struggles some more with social interactions along the way. Cool. This should be a prime candidate for my list of favorite series ever for a few reasons. The main character struggles with real issues that real people in the real world have. The characters of the series are overall not raging morons and speak to each other directly when needed. No contrived plot twists litter the episodes like gum on a New York sidewalk. There's this idea throughout of legacy and young people continuing old traditions, such as making a new dictionary that I'm a sucker for. And why not, I can see myself in the main couple quite a bit. And yet, I feel like this series bit off more than it could chew, and it couldn't reach its full potential as a result. It's no surprise that I love slice of life anime, just look at what I've recommended so far. I think what makes this different from other slice of life shows is the focus on the character's work life, and how that greatly influences who they are and how they relate to each other. Both Majime and Kaguya are very serious about their work, and that bleeds into their personal lives as well. We get a great start of their relationship. And then it's gone with the wind because his wife gets way less screen time than his work. And you may say, well, that's because Majime is so serious and dedicated to his work. It's actually quite rare to see young people portrayed as dedicated to their work as the characters in this series are, in my opinion. That's not to say that young people don't take their work seriously, because they mostly do. I'm not trying to sound like a boomer here, but work for the latest generations has transformed greatly. You see, at the beginning of this series, 2 old men who've been doing the same thing their whole life are contemplating whether there even are young people nowadays who have that same dedication. And it's meant to set the scene for our main character, but it's also an interesting commentary on the generation shift in the workforce. It's easy to do the same job for a lifetime when you like it and it pays enough. But when the workforce changes in such a way that only a few select jobs pay enough to make a reasonable living, it's kinda hard to uphold that passion. At the end of the day, we work to live, not the other way around. Look at Majime, for example. Now, he's likely autistic, so he probably has less confidence in living his dream than the average youngster, because being himself means being different, and in a comparatively conformist society like Japan, being different is not always good. The nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So Majime gets a job like everyone else as a salesman, and he's kinda terrible at it and he blames his social skills for it, but he uses it as a gateway to indulge in the things that he does have a passion for, such as books and words. This job barely seems to afford him a room in a boarding house, so can you blame him for not being gung-ho about his job? Now, of course, Majime ends up working in the dictionary department and he loves it, and it gives his life purpose in a way, but he's a lucky one for finding a niche job to suit his interests. And even then, this is a job that's most likely going to be cut, and it's looked down upon as being a money pit by the company, as many passion jobs tend to be. This long-ass tangent is all to say, this anime exposes a lot of the issues with young people in the modern workforce but doesn't really focus on them, because that's not the point of the show. And I think that's a shame, because with characters like Nishioka, it would be so easy to make a few remarks on how society forces young people to take jobs that aren't suited for them, just so they can make a living or appease various people. Parents, or in this anime in particular, moody bosses who will transfer you on a whim. On top of that, you are expected to be passionate about those jobs, or else you'll bring the team morale down. Or, even worse, seem like you're ungrateful for how good you've got it. And if you do end up working a passion job that doesn't pay too well, that's poor planning on your part, or perhaps not glam enough for parents who think doctor and lawyer are the only acceptable career choices. I say this because I'm in sort of a Kaguya situation right now, working to become a chef despite holding a master's degree. It's not glam and it's not easy, but the stable job I had before made my brain melt, and it was about as fit for my personality as movie critiquing, because as I said before, I'm just a jackass with subjective opinions that you for some reason tuned into. And in between changing my many band-aids from cuts I got trying to perfectly julienne some veggies, I make these videos to hopefully entertain some people, find greater purpose in life, and distract myself from the fact that I no longer have time for a social life.
Great success!
Speaking of social life, Majime doesn't have one either because he's married to his work. Again, he's socially awkward, but in many ways the Great Passage is as much about completing this dictionary as it is about Majime overcoming obstacles. His relationship with each character he interacts with is very interesting to me, but it's never explored as deeply as I wish it was. We see him talk to Nishioka, who is for all intents and purposes here to be the opposite of Majime, and we have high hopes for how their interactions will change both of them. But we're not shown how those changes happen. We just get a time skip, and everything is sorta kinda different, but not really, but yeah, maybe a little. And we see Majime trying to make the first step in talking to Kaguya, and he does it about as awkwardly as we'd expect, but nonetheless he succeeds, and we can't wait to see how his relationship with Kaguya will flourish. Except we don't see that because, again, time skip and they're married. I'm not sure how this is supposed to be a satisfying event for the watchers when we hardly get to see what exactly it is that they liked about each other. As for everyone else, Araki saw him as a useful employee from the very beginning, the professor saw a kindred soul and they both drowned and worked together, and the new girl was put off by his out-of-touch personality but was then somehow convinced through talk no jutsu by Nishioka to just do a character study on Majime, laugh at him a little, and join the madness because you have no choice, you poor salary woman. There's also this 1-minute comic relief segment in the middle of each episode where chibi dictionary mascots try to lighten the mood. Hard to tell, I skipped them all after the 3rd episode. Sorry, not sorry. Despite the ridiculousness of the comic relief segments and the frustration I got from being deprived of character development by a goddamn time skip, I think this is a good show that will give you lots to think about. So now, let's focus on some aspects of this series that don't feel like missed opportunities for social commentary. I love pre-time skip Majime. It's in his name too, he's a serious guy. He's not very socially perceptive, but he's detailed with his work and has great passion for it. The ways he struggles and seems to avoid failure like it's the plague is frustrating if you think of him as a character, but realistic if you think of him as a human. I think even post-time skip Majime, despite being the same as before but better at his job, is very realistic. It just doesn't match with his accomplishments somehow. Majime in real life would probably be married to his work and not in charge of everything. He's not exactly leader material. I still find him endearing and think he could have done better, as a character. He lives in a boarding house and his room is filled to the brim with books. From the beginning, he gives this air of an airheaded but well-read man. He pays attention to the nuances of people's words but does not notice the nuances of their behaviors. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that he is autistic and his personality is wonderful. He's an unusual main character. In fact, it almost feels like he shouldn't be the main character, with the way everyone laughs at his awkwardness and ends up accommodating him instead of driving him to change. The one thing that this show does manage to get across is the idea of goodness of fit and how people can influence that. I believe this show meant to show us this through the eyes of Majime, who was a horrendous fit in his salesman job, but adjusted much better to working on a dictionary and meticulously crafting definitions. Nevertheless, I think the point is driven home much better by Nishioka's character. Nishioka is a social butterfly. He can read the air and he just has a way with words. Everyone feels comfortable around him and they even feel comfortable making fun of him, which is a great feat for such a serious bunch of characters. Nishioka didn't really vibe with the whole dictionary making thing, but meeting Majime changed his perspective enough that he started actually enjoying it. I would argue that Nishioka walked out more changed from their encounter than Majime did. He knows what his strengths are and he's dedicated to accomplishing as much as he knows he can accomplish. And when he's transferred over to PR, he still finds a way to keep in touch with his old crew. I think his character shows us the two requirements most people have to be happy at their work. Either be suited and enjoy the work itself, or greatly enjoy the people they are working with. I really appreciate this show for showing how Nishioka started enjoying the dictionary work not because his interests magically shifted, but because of the good relationship he developed with the whole team. So for all of you out there who have no clue what the hell you want to do with your life, maybe take a look at Nishioka's example. It's hard to explain why I like this series after giving so many negative points about it. Maybe it is because I'm the target demographic and even an average show related to my interests is enjoyable. I'm going to go off script here because a lot of the things I liked about this series are very hard to put in words. It's really rather a series of moments that really touched my soul. Like when I watched them, I felt very good. In episode 3, where Majime meets Kaguya for the first time, I just love it so much. He's so dejected that he couldn't say a word to her that he bumps into a street pole and proceeds to apologize to it as if it were a person. Now, you might think that this is not normal adult behavior, but I feel like it's really in touch with who Majime is as a person. Like, that's exactly how I imagine him interacting with the opposite sex, and it's hilarious. I feel bad for him, but I also am cheering for him the entire time. In episode 4, there are a bunch of sex jokes that call Majime a dictionary hentai, or as translated in English, a dictionary freak. I don't know why that was so funny to me, but I was laughing the entire day after I heard that. I actually still have a screenshot of it on my phone. And I love Nishioka's relationship too. Small touches like his girlfriend checking in on him when she knows he might be having a hard time. It's just so realistic of how real people would react. How they come together at the end of the day after pretending not to know each other at work because that's how Japanese society works. I love how they talk about others when they're at home and just the general cozy feels of their relationship. The moment where Nishioka realizes how much he loves his girlfriend is just beautiful. They just fall asleep together, holding each other in a way that's very unusual for anime. We don't regularly see those small intimacy moments. It's usually either over the top or not present in an established relationship. Because somehow if you're in an established relationship, you just stop showing love to your partner, apparently. I also noticed that Majime speaks to his wife formally, although she does not. And that's interesting because he does use anata to refer to her. Now, if you don't know, anata is a second-person pronoun for you, and when it's used by a couple, it's kind of like calling someone dear or honey. It's also worth mentioning that this entire series is based off of a book, and there's also a movie version that was released before the series. And from what it looks like, the movie and the book have higher overall ratings than the anime series, which falls in line with my idea that the staff didn't have the money or time to put as much into the series as I hoped they would. But reading the reviews for the movie and the book, I notice a few common themes of what people are complaining about. And by far the most mentioned complaint is the time skip. It seems like myself and other people loved the first part of this series and saw great potential for it to grow into something really great. It has an amazing plot, it has a really good premise, it has a lot of promise, but then it feels like all of the development that we were expecting was time skipped away, and that really takes away from the strength of this book / film / series. The best parts of this anime are when they show the regular moments of those workers' lives. I wish they would have a little bit more focus of their life outside of work. And I know this is contradictory to what I said in the beginning, and that what makes this anime special is the fact that it focuses on the characters' work life. But when their work life is so stagnant, it's hard to justify the 11-episode core. It feels like this should have been a more comprehensive story for being an 11-episode series. It feels like they went too much into the abstract concept of the sea of words. And I studied linguistics in college. I like this kind of stuff. And yet, it just seemed too much. There wasn't enough of the people. There was too much of the work itself. And it's a little bit alienating to watch those characters whose whole life is defined by their work. Because society really wants our life to be defined by our work, and I don't think that's the case for a lot of people. Well, this is it. I hope you understood something from my rant. There's no real conclusion here. I just think this is a show worth watching if you like slow burners and slice of life, but I can't guarantee that its faults won't annoy you. But if you've watched it already, I'd be really interested to know what you took away from it. I think the conversations that are sparked from this kind of series are much more important than the actual enjoyment of the series. Does that make sense? Like, some series are really good at making us think and making us start conversations, and I think this is a series like that. It's not a series to consume in one day and then rant to your friends about, but it is definitely something that'll make you think.